Olá, muito bom dia. Bem-vindos aqui ao webinar sobre o mercado indiano, por parte da Câmara de Comércio e Indústria Portuguesa. Estamos neste momento a receber os primeiros participantes, a que desejo novamente bom dia. O meu nome é Pedro Magalhães e sou o Diretor de Comércio Internacional da Câmara de Comércio e Indústria Portuguesa e serei aqui o vosso anfitrião neste webinar sobre o mercado indiano. Temos o prazer de ter connosco a Mónica Darda, a nossa consultora para este mercado. Hello, Mónica, good morning and thank you for being here with us.
Good morning, everyone.
We are just waiting 2 or 3 minutes so the participants can get online, and then I will talk some words in Portuguese and then I will switch again to English, okay? Thank you so much.
Sure.
Vamos só esperar que se juntem nos próximos 2, 3 minutos os restantes participantes para podermos iniciar este webinar sobre o mercado indiano. Monica, meanwhile, we are waiting for the participants to get online. Can you tell us a little bit about India at this moment? What is the current situation and your opinion about the market at this moment in general terms before you get into your presentation, obviously?
Sure. Thank you. So specifically talking about the Indian economy, you might have seen that in these past couple of years, even though the world was suffering from the pandemic, country as such, India economically has done well, and we are growing. There has been a lot of import-export, and there has been a lot of traction towards the Indian market as far as exporting commodities are concerned, or even imports for that matter is concerned. So if I have to talk about the business is doing very well. The government is putting in special efforts to enhance the bilateral trade between India and a lot of nations globally. So this is also in favor of a lot of Indian and foreign companies to join hands and do business.
Very good. Excellent. So good perspectives for 2022.
Very much.
We're still waiting a little bit because we have more registered participants. So let's wait just 2 or 3 minutes more and then we will start the webinar.
No problem. We could wait for them.
Só esperar aqui bocadinho. A língua deste webinar vai ser em inglês, como já perceberam. No entanto, nesta primeira parte de introdução vou falar aqui bocadinho em português sobre aqui o mercado indiano e a nossa oradora, para depois passar novamente para inglês, onde será feita a apresentação por parte da Mónica nesta língua. Muito obrigado. Só esperar mais 1 minuto para as 10h35 e iniciaremos o webinar. Muito obrigado. Eu creio que já podemos começar. Eu vou dar aqui novamente as boas-vindas. O meu nome é Pedro Magalhães, Diretor de Comércio Internacional da Câmara de Comércio e Indústria Portuguesa, e vou ser hoje o vosso anfitrião durante este webinar sobre o mercado indiano. Quero desejar-vos as boas-vindas e, em particular, à nossa oradora, a Mónica, a quem agradeço a disponibilidade de estar aqui connosco hoje. Como sabem, a Índia é um dos principais players a nível internacional, tem uma população de 1,4 bilhões de pessoas, o que é a segunda maior a nível mundial. A sua dimensão populacional e a capacidade económica contribuíram naturalmente para o surgimento do país como uma potência global. Segundo os dados do Fundo Monetário Internacional, a Índia posicionou-se em 2021 como a 7ª maior economia do mundo, obviamente muito diversificada, com muitos problemas, com muitas diferenças de regiões, mas dispõe cada vez mais de uma ampla gama de indústrias modernas e uma capacidade e multiplicidade de serviços que têm cada vez mais uma relevância económica. E, acima de tudo, está a desenvolver-se como uma economia de mercado aberto, o que é muito bom para a economia global. Os principais grupos de produtos que nós temos exportado para este mercado nos últimos anos se assentam muito nas matérias têxteis, produtos químicos, metais, plásticos, borracha e produtos agrícolas, também algum setor alimentar. E, em termos de oportunidades de negócios, a Índia tem sido um mercado muito interessante para as áreas como a fintech, os serviços financeiros, biotecnologia, máquinas e equipamentos industriais, construção, setor eletrónico, alimentar, cuidados de saúde e farmacêuticos, enfim, em tantos outros para um mercado com esta dimensão. Mas, para melhor esclarecer estas empresas que estão aqui hoje connosco para participar neste webinar, no que diz respeito ao mercado indiano, convidámos a nossa consultora para este mercado, que é a Mónica Darda, que nos vem dar aqui uma apresentação e um overview do que está a passar na Índia, e esperamos que seja muito interessante para todos que nos estão aqui a ouvir. Agradeço também à Caixa de Depósitos, que continua a apoiar as nossas ações internacionais aqui da Câmara de Comércio, sempre ao nosso lado, é um parceiro privilegiado no que diz respeito a tudo o que são documentos financeiros e documentos de exportação para todas as empresas que queiram exportar para este mercado. Antes de começarmos, recordo apenas que algumas regras base de funcionamento do evento: as sessões são gravadas, o vídeo e os microfones dos participantes vão estar desligados. Todas as questões ou os comentários podem ser colocados na rubrica Q&A, que podem ver na barra inferior do Zoom, que depois eu coloco diretamente à Mónica, e podem ir enviando à medida que o webinar se vai desenrolando, para isto tornar-se dinâmico. Como se sabem e como referi no início, o webinar vai decorrer em inglês, portanto, agradeço também que as perguntas possam ser feitas em inglês, senão eu posso depois traduzi-las. And now, Monica, after this short presentation, I thank you again for your availability on being with us here today, and I give you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, good morning to all the companies who have joined us virtually. I believe the screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, it is.
Perfect. So today we would be discussing more about the Indian market as far as the economics of the market is concerned, and most importantly, the opportunities for Portuguese companies to enter and do business in the Indian market. So the session would majorly cover up various points or activities like what is the Indian market like? How does it look? What are the facts as far as the economics are concerned? The statistics with reference to the imports and exports with a relationship to the various continents across the globe. Then what are the India-Portuguese relationships we have? A brief statistics and information on sectors like the food and beverage, IT, ICT, textiles, footwear, metalworking. And for those segments, in case you do not find much information in the presentation, please feel free to put across your questions during any part of the presentation, and the team is available to answer right away. Post that, we would have a brief on how to have success in the country, being so different culturally, as well as the functionality of the various gimmicks of the business over here. And then what could be the various forms of expansion in the country. And in the end, we would have an open forum to all the companies to put across any of your queries or questions to be answered right away. So if you allow me, I'd like to move ahead with the presentation. Yeah, so we'll give you more about the country. So as far as India, the demographics of the country is concerned, it is divided into 29 states and 7 union territories. So with a vast area and such a lot of cultural difference, it could be treated as different countries altogether, from the north to the south. So you could see on your screen various states and the union territories, which helps to divide the country, and you could find a different culture across every border of the state and the cities, so to say. So it's the 7th largest as far as the area is concerned, the second most populous country across the globe, with approximately 1.36 billion of the people. The democracy is the most populous across the globe, with the world's third largest GDP, which is the fastest growing economics in the newly industrialized country. And as far as the scientists and the engineers pool is concerned, it is the second largest across the globe. Moving ahead, if we talk about the GDP of the country, the major sector or services per se comprises more than 50% of the total GDP, followed by the industry, which is 29.373%, and finally agriculture, which is 15.87%. The statistics have changed drastically over the years, wherein conventionally it was an agriculture based country, and now subsequently the focus has diverted to services and industry. So now if we talk about the distribution of industry as far as the GDP is concerned, the manufacturing industry comprises of 36%, followed by the machinery and equipment, which is 9%, high-tech goods, which is another 9%, motor vehicles and parts, another 9%, and then food products and chemicals comprising 8% respectively, with basic metals, metal products, electrical machinery, and apparatus in the rest of the contribution. So now if we get more into the economic stats of the country, then you could see, if we talk about the exports from India, which is almost 292 billion USD, the major exports are into the chemical products, which is 14%, followed by the textiles and the metals, then the mineral metals and the metal products, machined products, and rest you could see on your screen. Now, if we talk about the export destinations from India, the Asia Pacific itself has almost 50% of the export, followed by the European Union, which takes up to almost 21%, and then North America having 18% exports, Africa 7.9%, and the South America doing 2.5%, and the numbers are growing gradually. If we talk about the export destinations country-wise, the United States has almost 15% of the exports, followed by China. Then you could also see a good amount of exports going to Japan and the various countries which are seen on your screen. If we talk about import by India, which is almost double the export, that's 418 billion USD. So the major imports which the India does is mineral products, which is almost 30%, machines, which is 20%, chemical products, 8.7%, metals, 6.2%, and then the subsequent products like plastic products or vegetable products, paper products, etc., seen on your screen. So if we talk about the imports by India, and if we want to really segregate them, so then the crude petroleum is 2.9%, the coal briquettes is 18%, the telephone segment is 2.7%, gold is 9.3%, diamonds 4.9%. We have the ethylene polymer 1.62%, palms 0.5%, vehicles 1%, dried legume is 0.81%, and broadcasting equipments doing 1.8%. So now moving ahead, if we talk about the import destinations for India, Asia is 58% from where major imports are done, followed by the European Union from where 18% is done. 7.5% comes from North America, 9% comes from Africa, and Oceania doing 3.7%. So you could see the import destinations of India on your screen, wherein the major chunk is coming from China, rest from the other countries like the United States, Switzerland, South Africa, Australia, Hong Kong, Italy, Russia, Singapore, Indonesia, South Korea, Malaysia, and Saudi Arabia, as seen on your screen. Moving ahead, if we get to see a brief about the economy breakup by 2025, which is expected. So the manufacturing segment, which includes the defense, electronics, aeronautical, auto and auto components, space, jewelry, food processing, ready-made garments, organic or Ayurvedic products, robotics and automation equipments, advanced materials, etc., to reach around 1 trillion USD. The service segment, which is almost 50% of the GDP today, is expected to reach 3 trillions with IT and ITES taking the major crux, followed by tourism and hospitality, medical value, travel and transport, logistics, service, accounting and finance services, AV services, legal, communication services, construction and related engineering services, environmental services, educational services. And finally, the agricultural segment, which will expected to be reach around 1 trillion, with the major of livestock, crops, farms, mechanization, seeds, and fertilizers. So now if we talk about the total FDI, which is the inflow coming in the manufacturing subsector. So we could see a lot of FDI is coming through the automotive industry, which is almost 24.6%, followed by the chemical industry, which is 18.1%, the drugs and pharmaceutical industry, which is 16.9%, food processing industry, which is 10.2%, the electrical equipments, which is 9.8%, cement and gypsum products, which is 5.3%, and the textiles and electronics followed by each other. So now to give more insights about the India-Portugal relationships, the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, held talks with the Portuguese counterpart, Mr. Antonio Costa, and discussed ways to the further intensify bilateral trade relations in 2017. Under that, we have seen a high-level political.
Some technical problems.
Yeah, I think so. We're facing a technical problem.
It always happens when we are not expecting.
I know. Technology with its advantages and a brief hindrances, I could say. Yeah. So I'm sorry for that break. So the recent high-level political exchanges have imparted a robust momentum to the bilateral relations between India and Portuguese. And this includes several new areas such as science and technology, defense, supporting the startups, shipping academics or youth exchange programs, and a lot of cultural influence. In 2019-20, there was a bilateral trade which was almost 886.6 million USD, wherein India exports stood at 744.79 million USD, and the Portuguese exports was 141.82 billion USD. In 2020, India was Portuguese 46th largest destination of goods and the 15th largest supplier. Major exports from Portuguese are the machineries and the appliances, metals, minerals, plastic and rubber, chemicals, textiles and apparels, leather, paper, pulp, wood and cork, optical and precision instruments. Portugal ranks 51st in the FDI into India, with total FDI inflows amounting to 103.36 million USD as of December 2020. Now, the major important point is to understand the cultural differences in the businesses of these two countries. So now, with a brief on the Indian tradition and the Western tradition. As far as the Indian business is concerned, it is more of cost centric than the machine or the advancement centric. But as far as the Western tradition is concerned, it is more machine or mechanized centric, we could say. Talking about networks, if we compare the network in India and the network in the Western countries, you could see on your screens, the networks in the Western countries are very small and very simple, easily accessible. However, if we talk about the networks in India, there is so much of hierarchies and levels and people one above the other that it is kind of a mesh which needs to be understood very clearly to actually do business with the country. Now, if we talk about the communication part, as far as the Western countries are concerned, you could expect a prompt or an immediate communication. Unfortunately, with the Indian market, it's not the same case. You would expect a delay in communication and to have a timely reply on each of the activities, there really needs to be a push or a good amount of follow-up from the local or the native places. If we talk about decision making, then in India, boss is the only decision maker and above everyone in the organization. which at sometimes delays the entire decision-making process. But on the other hand, if we talk about the Western countries, boss is just an equivalent to the other employees, and that is where the decision making happens pretty much faster. If we talk about handling problems, so you see it in the Western countries that the problems are directly targeted and resolved in a very straight and a simple way. But as far as the Indian economy is concerned, there is a very much a process wherein the people try to avoid problems and try to reroute their ways just to bypass the problems. And when it comes to actually addressing the problems, in the Western countries, you could find it very simple. A problem is directly targeted with a solution. However, with reference to the Indian market, there'll be a lot of ifs, buts, twists, and turns while addressing the actual problem. Now, would like to give you brief insights on each of the sectors which were to be discussed. So we would first have a look on the food and the beverage industry in India. So the key facts about the industry is, as of August 2021, there were almost 22 mega food parks that are functioning in the country, and now the target is to make them more than 40. By 2025, India's food processing industry is expected to be half a worth of $1 trillion. India ranks third in the world in the production of egg with almost 114.38 billion in 2019-20. Milk production is almost 198.4 million tons in the year. Now, if we talk about the food, grocery, and the food service segment, it is growing at a CAGR of 25% and 15% respectively. Hence, by 2030, the Indian annual household consumption to treble, making it the fifth largest consumer of the food products. Now, if we look into the market size of the food and beverage industry across the country, you could see it since 2015 to 2020, it has grown from 19.82 billion USD to 45.97 billion USD with a steady growth YOY. Now, moving ahead, if we look into the market segmentation of the food segment, then 46% comes from fine dining. The 32% comes with the casual dining. QCR is around 12%, cafes up to 7%, and others up to 3%. And these statistics are majorly because of the maximum population coming between the age group of 20 to 45. Moving ahead, if we talk about the cold chains or the food chains, you could see on your screen divided across various states in the segments like fruits and vegetables, meat, dairy, marine, ready to eat, or multi commodity, or in traditional. You could see the numbers like for Punjab, it is 7, 3, and 1, or Haryana, it is 5, Rajasthan, it is 2, Gujarat, it is 4 and 4 each, Madhya Pradesh, it is 3, so on and so forth on your screen, which shows how much focus is put across on these cold chains across the different parts of the country. Now, again, if we talk about the mega food parks, wherein the 17 are already operational, 21 are in progress, and 2 of them already approved and should be start installing in the soon coming future. So these are some of the major food parks which you see on the screen, most of them focused on the western and the southern part of the country. So now moving ahead, talking about the food processing industry, we're the world's largest producer, consumer, and exporter of spices. The world's largest processor, producer, and consumer of cashew nuts, second largest producer of food grains, fruits, and vegetables. Food processing are majorly into the form of grains, sugar, edible oil, beverages, and dairy. 39,748 registered units with a market size of 543 billion is already available in the country. The food processing industry size has grown from 265 billion USD and is expected to reach 460 billion USD by 2025 with a CAGR of 12.31%. Now, if we get into the share of food and allied products in the major imports across the countries, you could see there has been a steady growth a bit of the downfall during the pandemic times, and now the graph has taken up very well in the last year and is expected to grow steadily in the subsequent years. So if we talk about export of agriculture and the processed food products, we look into the statistics wherein the maximum happened for rice, followed by the meat, dairy, and the poultry products. Then we had fruits and vegetables which were exported, cereal preparations and miscellaneous processed items, followed by other cereals, cashews, oil meals. So now if we talk about the potential for growth in the food segment, the functional food and beverage, the Indian nutraceutical market is poised to grow up to 2.8 billion USD and is expected to reach 8.5 billion USD in 2022. The snack food segment amounting to 5,839 million in 2020, and the market is further expected to grow with a CAGR of 6.3%. The Indian milkshake market is expected to grow by almost 25% of CAGR between 2019 to 2024. The hot drinks market is expected to grow annually by 6.5% from 2018 to 2022, and India is the world's largest consumer of tea with around 30% of the global output. By 2024, the food processing industry will potentially attract 33 billion USD of investment and generate employment to another 9 million people globally. The major Indian food and beverage companies, if you could see on your screen, are Parle Agro, Vadilal, Mother Dairy, Venky's, MTR, Haldiram, Amul, Britannia, Dabur, and many others. So this was majorly about the food and food processing segment. Moving ahead, we'd like to know more about the IT as well as the BPM industry. So talking about the sector, it is the third largest industry as far as India is concerned. We are the second largest tech-based startup hub in the world. The industry stood at 177 billion USD and is expected to grow up to 350 billion USD in 2025. India hosts second highest internet users across the globe. There are around 7,000 firms, out of which 1,000 are large firms with 50 plus delivery locations. Moving ahead, about more facts about the IT and the BPN industries.
Before you move ahead, Monica,
Yeah.
just a question here that rose from the participants.
Sure.
If you have an idea what is India total fish consumption, or if you have some data about the fish consumption in India.
Yeah, so if we talk about, I think so I've lost the connection.
I can hear you.
I think so we lost the connection.
I can hear you. If you can hear me?
Yeah, if you could please repeat.
Yes. So we have a participant that is asking if you have an idea about the total fish consumption in India or any data related to fish consumption in India.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so specifically, if we talk about fish consumption in India, the market is segmented majorly into two parts. First is the fresh fish, which is the fishing is done in the country itself and there's a consumption done. And the second is the processed form of it, wherein a lot of exports are also happening. So if I have to give you the specifics on both these segments, maybe we'll just get through the numbers, and in the end, during the question and answer session, I'll give you the actual figures on both the fresh fish consumption as well as the dried or the processed fish consumption.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. So moving ahead with the IT industry statistics. So the major clusters you could find in Maharashtra, that's the western part of the country, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, all based in the southern part of the country, and Delhi NCR, which is in the northern part of the country. With the major companies like Capgemini, Infosys, Tata, TCS, Tech Mahindra, Wipro. So these are a couple of, or IBM, Accenture, HCL, HP. These are some of the major brands which are doing great business in the country. So if we talk about their contribution to the economy, so they almost contribute to 8.1% of the GDP coming inside the country. The leading global sourcing destination accounts to 55% of the market share. India acquired a share of around 38% of the total overall BPM sourcing market, and it is ranked second in the FDI inflow with investment of around 47.38 million USD from 2000 to 2020. The IT industry itself employs 5.1 million people as far as the statistics were concerned for the last financial year. So if we talk about the segmentation of the industry, it is majorly divided into IT services, the business process management, which we call the BPM, the software products and engineering services, and the hardware part of it. So if we look into the market size by sectors, a majority or the total from the volumes comes from the IT industry, which is almost 99 billion USD, followed by e-commerce, which is 57 billion USD, BPM, which is 38 billion USD, and then ER&D, that is 31, and finally the software products, which is 9.2 billion USDs. So if we talk about the Indian spendings on the IT and the forecast from 2020 rising to 2021 by 8%, and by 2022, which is expected to reach 99 billion USD by around another 6.48% of growth. So now, if we again get into more details of the spending forecasts, you could see on your screen with reference to the devices, the communication services, the IT services, software, data center systems, and the overall IT. So if we talk about the ICT goods that India imports, there has been a gradual increase and a subsequent downfall as far as the imports are concerned. However, if we talk about the total exports and the domestic market for the IT and the BPM industry, there has been a steady rise in the numbers YOY, which you could see on your screen, which has reached up to 28 billion USD in 2020. So now if we get more in details of IT software and services from India, wherein there is a segregation between IT services, BPM, and software products and engineering. So IT services are the ones which are expected to have a steady growth, followed by the rest of the two on your screen. Now, if we talk about the Indian IT's emerging verticals, so the first one is BFSI, followed by high tech or telecom, manufacturing, retail, healthcare, travel and transportation, construction and utilities, and the others. So the major IT companies in the country are TCS, that's a part of the Tata Group, Wipro, L&T, Infosys, Tech Mahindra, Mindtree, Hexaware, Emphasis, HCL. Now, moving ahead, after the IT industry, we would like to have a brief understanding about the metalworking industry. If you have any questions regarding any part of the IT industry, please feel free to ask.
Monica, yes, we have some questions, but it's still related with the food industry, so we can see.
Yeah,
if we
so
can,
maybe
end,
we could get the questions now, or else we could just have one thing. We could have the questions typed in the chat box, and then we would be answering each one of them during the question and answer session, if that is okay.
Okay, perfect. They're already here, and then we
will. So I see a couple of questions already there. Perfect.
Thank you.
So now, the Indian mining industry, we are the second largest crude steel producer in the world, generating an output of around 99.6 metric tons by 2020. We're the second largest coal producer in the world, the fourth largest iron ore producer in the world, and we have operating almost 1,531 mines, which produces 95 different minerals. So if we talk about the various metalworking processes in the countries, they range from rolling, extrusion, drawing, forgings, or sheet metal forming. Now the coal and iron ore deposits in the country, wherein you could see it on your screen, ranging in the mid part of the country with states like Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh. This is the eastern part of the country. Assam, Nagaland, Meghalaya. These are the part of Seven Sisters, they call them. West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, and Odisha. So here you'll find the major deposits. Now the emerging manufacturing hubs. The manufacturing sector of India is poised to become a trillion industry by 2025. The metal forming industry of India is considered as one of the shining examples in the global fabrication industry. We're the fourth largest automotive hub in the world, ranked the third in the list of most suitable locations amongst the global manufacturing as compared to another 48 countries. So the major growth drivers in this segment is the rise in the infrastructural development, a lot of road constructions, railway developments, new projects coming up, smart city projects, a lot of the initiatives put across by the government. The automotive hub being the largest manufacturer of tractors globally, second largest manufacturer of two-wheeler, fourth largest manufacturer of the passenger cars. Both domestic and foreign investments in the Indian manufacturing sector have been on a rise. So Indian power sector is undergoing a significant change with the demand staring constantly upstick backed by increase in the manufacturing activities. This was majorly for the metalworking and process industries. Now, moving ahead, the leather and the footwear industry in the country. So, if we talk about the textiles and the apparel industry, we are amongst the world's largest producers of the textiles and apparels. We're the largest producer of the cotton and jute in the world. We're the second largest producer of the polyester, silk, and the fiber in the world. We expected to reach 222 billion USD by 2023 with more than 3,000 textile mills in the country. So now if we talk about the segmentation of the industry or the growth of the textile and the apparel industry, we could see the industries reached from 108 to 223 million USD by 15 to 2021. The major textile manufacturing players across the country are listed on your screens, which are from various parts of the country, from like Rajasthan, Punjab, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Delhi, NCR, with a couple of major brands holding the entire market with a basic rule of 80-20%. So now if we talk about the textile parks, these are the major textile parks already available in the country, which does a lot of fabric processing and business. So if we distribute the entire segment by population, 38% is for 0 to 21 years of age. Another 45% from 22 to 80 years of age, and 17% for the senior citizens like 81 plus years of age. If we talk about the fashion-based products, then 48% goes for clothes or the apparels, we call them. 35% is for the footwears, and the rest subsequent percentage for the handbags, jewelry, health and beauty, and the other segment. So the textile market is grown from 17 billion USD to 45 billion USD in a span of last 8 years, which is expected to grow with a CAGR of 18% by 2025. Now, if we talk about the segmentation into the types of apparels, majority of 53% is for the casuals, followed by the sportswear, which is 27%, formals, which is 15%, and ethnic, which is 5% of the total segmentation. Now let's move ahead to the footwear market, which is estimated to reach 15.5 billion by 2022 from 10.6 billion in 2019. India is the second largest producer of footwear, the second largest exporter of leather garments, and the fifth largest exporter of leather goods. It is expected that India's non-leather footwear industry will cross 6 billion mark by 2024. The leather, footwear, and accessories sector in India contributes about 2% of the total GDP. India imported 291 million pairs in 2019-20, and it is the world's largest, or the 10th largest, I could say, importer in terms of the quantity, having a world share of around 2.2% from the globe. Now, if we look into the segmentation of footwear, then 61% is the casual footwear, followed by the mass footwear, which is 22%. The sportswear is another 7%, followed by the premium leather with another 7%, and the premium non-leather, which is another 3% of the total segment. So if we now have to really categorize the textile and footwear by the retail type, between the growth they had since 2017 to 2022. The traditional growth has come down, whereas the modern or the e-commerce segment is doing really well, specifically the e-commerce segment, which has grown from a 6% to 10% rise across the period of last 5 years. So now if we talk about imports of clothing and textiles in the values, the textile fabric with the plastic is almost 483 million USD, which accounts to 9% of the total imports. This is followed by raw cotton, then wool, then synthetic filament yarn, the synthetic staple fiber yarns, the synthetic staple fiber itself, and the woven fabric, which is another 3%. Further, if you talk about the imports of footwear, then the categories like the rubber or plastic footwear is the maximum with the utilization in the industry to the course, which is almost 106 million USD, which comprises 23% of the total imports, followed by the footwear with textile body, which is the cloth-based footwear, we could call it, which is almost 83.2%, which is another 18% in the total statistics. Footwear with the leather body, mostly into the formal segment, is 79.2%. Parts of footwear, 71%. Other footwears, 51.2%. And the waterproof footwear is 21.6%. If we talk about the exports of the clothing and the textile, maximum exports is of cotton yarn, which is almost 4.02 billion USD, which is 10%, followed by raw cotton, cotton linen, women's suit, t-shirts, women's shirt, and then men's shirt. Talking about the exports of footwear, then the maximum exports are the footwear with leather body, which is 65%, which is almost $2.3 billion of a business, followed by the parts of footwear, rubber and plastic footwear, or footwears with textiles. Now, the major brands dealing into textiles and footwears are Arvind, Bombay Dyeing, or Bombay Rayon, Aditya Birla Group's Grasim, which is a brand, Raymond, Nitin Spinners Limited, and for footwear, it's Campus, Lakhani, Liberty, Relaxo, Paragon, Action, Spiker. So now, this was majorly regarding the various segments in the industry, or a brief insights on the different segments available. If there are no much questions on either of the parts of the segments, we will move ahead to understand what are the steps to have success to having business in the Indian market.
So I think we have questions, but it's only related with the food sector. So
okay, so then we'll have these
yeah.
answers done in the subsequent part of the presentation. Let's focus on these steps for success. So the first and foremost for any organization to enter into a new market is to understand yourself. You really need to understand what are your manufacturing capabilities, what is the infrastructure you have, what is the product and its suitability with reference to the Indian market. Is the approvals already in place? Do you have the required certifications? Are there good amount of resources allocated, and is there a subsequent budget given, so that this gives us a clear image or idea as to where we are. So once you understand yourself or your capabilities, the next big thing to know is the market. So first is to, as far as India is concerned, as we discussed earlier also, it is a money centric or a price centric country. So you really need to understand the gimmicks of the business. What are the statistics as far as the import is concerned? What are the market trends? Who are the competitors? Who are the customers? How's the logistic cost going to do? What is the taxes or the duties, etc., before you enter into the Indian market? Then next is preparing yourself. So once you know about your capabilities, once you have understood the target market, it's time to prepare ourselves. So preparing would be first defining right strategy and roadmap, because the country is so vast, just cannot enter randomly. It has to be divided into different segments of different parts of the country. Then having a roadmap and accordingly budget and resources to capture on each of the parts of the country. Then once that is done, having the marketing material in place in the regional languages, like the presentation, websites, catalogs, brochures, etc., changes in the products as per the standards or as per the climatic conditions in different part of the country. And once all of this is in place, then approaching the customers. So we need to identify who the final potential customer is, approaching the relevant associations, clusters, attending trade fairs, we have a lot of trade fairs happening on a physical as well as a virtual platform in the country, using social media for the updates, digital lead generation, physical client meetings will help you actually understand how the business runs within the country. So now, when we are ready, there are various ways in which the expansion could be done. So just like to quickly touch base on what those ways could be. So first and foremost is to have a physical presence in the country, and that could be by having an actual office or a virtual office. Next is appointing partners or dealers and distributors for your products. Third could be appointing sales representatives in the country who could actually visit the customers and do the business development activities. Next is setting up sales offices or actual warehouses for just-in-time deliveries. Once the business is in place, we could think of joint ventures or collaborations to have manufacturing done in the country, as India is a cost sensitive market. So cost will play a very important role to have good sales volume achieved. It could also be a possibility to acquire small companies into similar products with an established marketing or sales base, to have a strategic alliance or a project based cooperation. And finally, setting up greenfield or brownfield facility with reference to an entire establishment in the country and catering to nearby countries using India as a base. So then this is specifically on what are the ways to get into the Indian market. One of the very easiest ways is lead generation, which could be done digitally and need not have any physical presence requirement at the preliminary stage. So the key steps is deciding the sectors and regions, then deciding on who is the target potential customer, having the content and graphs in place, putting the posts and tracking on the results, arranging video conferencing calls, and then monitoring with the tools we already have in place. So the objectives of these campaigns is having visibility. There could be engagements with the potential customers in the form of video conferences, a lot of lead generation, bringing clients on webinars, hosting video conferences, and doing a lot of lead nurturing activities for business conclusion. So these are some of the platforms which could be utilized, like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, web page, online chats, blogs, mail campaigns, or webinars, to have a digital presence created across in the country and globally. Now we are starting off with the question and answer session. I already see around 8 questions put across in the chat box. So we'll be answering the questions one by one. I'd request the team to turn off the camera, please. So the first question is there any figures available for wine imports in India? Do they consume wines on their supermarkets? So as far as the figures are concerned, okay. So I am also joined by our expert, Mr. Rohan, who would also help us to understand some of the answers. So the first question is with reference to the registry of the food products or the meat products. So Rohan, if you could just take up this question.
Yeah, thanks, Monica, and good morning, all the companies. This is Rohan. Uh, so regarding the questions, I can see the question like I would like to know if any registry of the product is needed near Indian authorities prior to export. Yeah, definitely. It is needed. You have to submit your products to the FSSAI, that is Food Safety and Standard Authority of India, under which your food product is tested, and you will get the approval. After that, you can export to the Indian market.
So the next question is, if it is needed, please advise some companies that are able to help us registering the products. So I guess we could have a one-on-one discussion for these sort of activities wherein there is a very specific requirement on how to support you to have the registrations of the products done. So now moving ahead, what would you say are the costs of entry in the food e-commerce market in India?
Yeah, regarding the e-commerce industry, India is growing very fast, and by 2025, it can be 114 USD billion. Definitely, for entering into the Indian market in e-commerce sector, first for the basic infrastructure, you will be requiring USD 1,500 to 2,000 for entry into the Indian market.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess you've got a brief about the entry into the e-commerce market. Moving ahead, we'd like to have the next question, which asks about the current protectionist taxes in the food, particularly with the edible oil markets in the country. Rohan,
Yeah, just give me a minute.
sure. Sure.
So Monica, we can give the answer of this later on, because on the product basis, the cost is different for each product. So according to that, we can give the cost later on.
Okay, so as Rohan mentioned, the tax structure differs from product to product, as well as the way in which the product, as you are specifically asking about edible oil, so which form it is, is it crude or is it completely processed, will define the tax structure separately. And that's where we'll need more inputs about the products before we give you the actual tax structures. Moving ahead, what is the importance of the shipbuilding industry?
I would just like to add that if any question that the participants have might not be answered in the depth, we can also receive your comments by email to internacional@ccip.pt, and we will try to help. I will say in Portuguese, Monica, just to make it clear. Qualquer questão que possam ter com maior profundidade sobre estes temas, podem nos contactar através do internacional@ccip.pt e nós procuraremos ajudar, tá bem? Obrigado. Thank you, Monica.
Yeah. So we've already spoken. Yeah. So Rohan, if we could just put a bit of light on the shipbuilding industry in the country.
Yeah, the shipbuilding industry is growing. The government as well as private companies are taking part in this sector. So we can provide a short report on shipbuilding industry.
Perfect.
Later on. Yeah.
So next is what is your suggestion to penetrate India's highly fragmented grocery markets? What would be a winning strategy? There are multiple winning strategies, I could say, and one of the highest growing market is the grocery market in the country. Having said that, with a lot of new policies come across promoting a lot of imports and localization, if we can identify which segment of grocery you're eyeing for, we could give you one of those strategies which will help you penetrate into the Indian market, definitely. Next question is, which authorities can we appeal when we have problems with suppliers? We paid upfront and the products aren't according with the order. Now, this specifically needs to we need to understand what products are we referring to, because as far with the change in the product or the segment, the authority changes. So if this is for food, then the segment will be different. Also in the food segment, what category of food it is, it will change. And region is another thing. But first we need to understand what category of product that was. Do we have any further questions coming up?
I don't think so.
What would you say are the costs of entry in the food e-commerce market in India in Goa? So was this
So as I already mentioned, for e-commerce in food industry, you will be require USD 1,500 to 2,000 for basic infrastructure. In the you can say that is Goa.
I guess we do not have any further questions coming up. Oh, there's one. It's graphite products in Navi Mumbai. Okay. So if it is specifically for graphite products in Navi Mumbai, we'll have to discuss it in person. I cannot put across all the details over the open forum right now. But yes, we can definitely support you to connect to the right agencies to get the details resolved.
Thank you, Monica. I think we reached the final point of the webinar. And I think we have some questions that obviously can arise from the participants, but again, I will ask each one of the participants to contact us, and we will obviously put you in contact with the experts on each field and try to help you clarify any doubts that you have concerning your sectors entering in India. So thank you all for being here with us this morning. I think it's been quite interesting knowing a little bit more about India and the current situation. Monica, thank you so much for the excellent presentation, which we will be sending to all the participants in the end of the webinar. And regarding the questions, we will wait for the participants to send us to international@ccip.pt, and we will help them entering India for sure. I will challenge all of you to participate on our virtual trade mission to India, which will happen this month of February. You can also look at our website and see all the other actions that we have in terms of international markets. Monica, thank you again. And thank you all the participants. I will switch to Portuguese just to make a close of the webinar. And I look forward to see you again, Monica. Thank you so much.
Pleasure was mine, and I look forward to have more discussions with the companies and you to support them with the Indian market. Any further queries coming up, we could be available to support you, consulting.
Thank you so much. Obrigado a todos. Finalizamos aqui o webinar, como referi em inglês. Queiram nos contactar, por favor, através do internacional@ccip.pt com qualquer dúvida que tenham sobre a entrada dos vossos produtos ou serviços para este interessantíssimo mercado indiano. E qualquer outra dúvida que tenham relativamente à internacionalização das vossas empresas, estamos aqui para ajudar também. Muito obrigado e espero ver-vos numa outra oportunidade. Bom dia, obrigado. Thank you, Monica. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.